Hi, I'm John Barton. I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite assignments I give my theater students, and this is sonnet number 18, William Shakespeare. What we're going to do here today is we're going to go through this particular sonnet, and what I do is I have my students on the back of the paper. They're going to draw out what they think that sonnet means to them. Now, this is September, and I always do September Shakespeare, Shakespeare September. And let's go ahead and go through this. This is sonnet number 18, in case you haven't heard it before. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's leaf hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines the time thou growest. So as long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Now, Shakespeare wrote a lot of different sonnets, over 120 of them, and this one's number 18. It's probably one of the most famous ones. So the first thing I do is I explain to them is like, let's count how many lines are in a sonnet, and we'll count there are 14 lines in a sonnet. You'll also notice that the first and the third rhyme as a couplet, while the second and the fourth rhyme. So I point this out. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Then I say, let's look at lines 2 and 4. Thou art more lovely and more temperate, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Those words don't exactly rhyme. So this is a good point to remember that this is 400 years old. And when they pronounced these words back then, it had a different sound than they do now. So I say that thou art more lovely and more temperate. That would be the original pronunciation. And I give them this example because our language keeps evolving. Our language will change in another 400 years. It won't sound like the way we speak now. To give them a very contemporary version, I remind them that, hey, one of my students told me, Mr. Barton, you ate that today. I'm like, what did I eat? It's like, no, Mr. Barton, your drip is cool. It's like, what am I dripping? What are you talking about? Okay, so the modern slang is something that was only recently invented. 5 years from now, it won't be even mentioned again. And I say, have you ever heard someone call something groovy? Exactly. That's from the 60s and 70s. Or maybe, hey man, you're bad, from the 1980s. So a couple of things to think of there. I also remind them, I say, let's check out the beat here. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Okay, so it's long, short, 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 long, short. That's our iambic pentameter. What I say is this is Shakespeare's style. Now, right or wrong, it's just the way he does it. I give them the example of let's compare Eminem's rap to Bulldog's rap, or Pitbull. Yeah, Bulldog, Pitbull, same thing to me. Anyhow, if you compare those two artists, they are both rappers, but they have very different styles. Okay, so this is Shakespeare's style, iambic pentameter. And he does all his sonnets like this and most of his plays. There are parts of his plays where he doesn't use iambic pentameter, where it's just a free verse, but most of the time he uses this. This is a mnemonic for him, at least for the actors, so that way they can memorize their lines a little bit easier. But it's also his style. This is how he likes to do things. As far as some of the themes that are going on here, let's talk about the theme. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? In England, a summer's day is absolutely beautiful. I ask my students, what's summer like here in Texas? Well, summer here in Texas is hellishly hot. We're talking about 95, 100 degrees a lot of times, and it lasts forever. Well, England's much further north than we are here in Texas, so summer is much shorter. It's like 2.5 months tops, and their days are much, much nicer. It's like 75, 80 degrees, beautiful weather. So Shakespeare's talking about, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? You're saying, wow, you're about as perfect can be. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Okay, but later on he also throws in death, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. Okay, so he's slinging both love and death, which can be considered opposites: life and death, love. Um, Another thing that I like to point out to them is that basically there's lots of different ways that you can interpret this. Who is he talking to? Is he talking to his wife? Is he talking to his girlfriend? He had both. Was he talking maybe about someone that he admires? Maybe he's talking about a relative that he loves that's already passed away, or maybe a lover that he had that's already gone. There's lots of different ways to interpret this. We have to interpret these sonnets through our own lives and try to figure out exactly what it means to us, not necessarily what Shakespeare originally means. So there's a lot of different ways to interpret this. Now, let me get a couple of different examples to show what some of my students have done. Here's one that I like a lot, and this one is just a very simple graveyard, okay? And you see rest in peace on there. So they're showing that, hey, he's visiting someone that he loves and he misses them. And although it's a beautiful summer day, it's not quite the same without them. Showing another one that I like. This one is just simple words, but look, love and death. There's a lot going on here. Notice the different font choices this person did. A couple of other ones here that I like. This one definitely inspired by Beauty and the Beast here. It's kind of hard to see because of lighting, but it's a rose under glass, till death do we part. Here's another one right here where someone is like, they've created like the perfect summer day for themselves. It's hard to tell, but there are leaves on this tree. One thing I do stress quite a bit is in this particular assignment, I don't judge them on their artistic ability. This is not an art class. Stick figures are perfectly fine. What's more important is the ability to communicate your ideas and sell me on your idea. So if they draw something, you have to ask them to explain it and justify why they drew that. And that's going to give them a few minutes to really embellish their thoughts. This is a great introduction not only to Shakespeare, but a great way to introduce how to graphically communicate to someone ideas based on thoughts in your head, which is definitely a very theatrical way of looking at things. And it's a great way to start designing classes, also communication classes. And of course, if you want to transfer these skills over to a different poem, of course you can. I just picked number 18 because it's probably the most famous one.